Ted Nguyen of The Athletic joins today's Locked On Giants podcast as we look at the New York Giants issues this season. That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Trainer, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find my written work. And as always, welcome on into my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, my special guest today is Ted Nguyen of The Athletic. He does the film study on all 32 teams, so he's pretty well versed on what's going on around the league, breaking down film and whatnot. And I'm really glad to have him. Ted, thanks so much for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Ted, a big question a lot of people, I guess, want to know why is the New York Giants offense. A lot of people thought that once Brian Daboll took over the play calling of the New York Giants offense, that maybe things would be a little different, that it would be a little bit more productive. Having seen Daboll, from his time in Buffalo when he was the offensive coordinator to now with the Giants, if you had to pinpoint where the biggest issue is, why the Giants offense hasn't been as explosive, hasn't been as productive, where would you wander with your theory?
Well, I think when they had successes with the running game, they were able to at least hang their hat on the running game. And even though Daniel Jones was turning over the ball at a high rate, or he would miss a pass here and there, they could always turn to the running game. They could always turn to Saquon Barkley and try to get some explosive rushes. And they had a very creative running game. And, Daniel Jones' mobility had to do with that. But this year, they can't even run the ball very consistently. They're they're a bottom 10 as far as running game efficiency goes. I think a lot of it has to do with the health of the offensive line. When I watch the Giants, I still see creative concepts, like they're trying different things, and I think they're doing good stuff schematically. But I know that's hard to hear because they just have not had a lot of success. But when you look at the offensive line, they've tried to rebuild it, and they've tried to rebuild it with not a lot of resources. Like, I think Jermaine Aluminor is a fine right tackle, but Van Roten is, he performed kind of well last year for the Raiders, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's mostly a career backup. And it's just, they haven't been able to build this offensive line, and then they're dealing with injuries on top of that. It's just hard to do anything when you can't block people consistently.
I was going to ask you, how much do they miss Saquon Barkley? Because look, when he was here, people make the argument that they didn't win much with him in the lineup, but still, looking beyond that, how much do they really miss Saquon Barkley, do you think?
I think they do miss Saquon Barkley. I mean, you cannot, deny the impact that he had just being able to break tackles and really maximize every run. And then, you have his contributions in the passing game as well. But at the same time, I think for the long run, it makes sense not to re-sign him, because this is not a team that's ready to compete right now. This is a team that needs to be realistic with itself and start to rebuild. And you can't lock yourself into a running back that is getting up there in age. And frankly, the decision to draft him as high as they drafted him was probably a mistake. They probably should have used that draft pick on other players that kind of impact winning a little bit more than a running back, more foundational pieces. Running backs, I think matter. They've been more impactful in recent years because teams have played with such light boxes and they're kind of giving you the run. So running backs are making more of an impact now, but they're still not as valuable as a franchise left tackle, which the Giants do, but he's hurt, or a franchise quarterback, or a pass rusher, or a corner. So I think it losing Saquon hurts right now. But in the long run, it's probably the best decision to move on from him and really look at yourself and say, we need to really start a rebuild.
You mentioned franchise quarterbacks. The Giants are on year 6 with Daniel Jones. First question I want to ask you about him. How much do you think the constant changing of systems and coaches and philosophies have set him back? Or do you see his problems kind of, carrying over from his days at Duke?
I think it's a little bit of both for sure, but he has had some continuity in this system. I know that Brian Daboll took over play calling, but it's still the same system, same terminology. So there's not much of a huge, it doesn't take learning a whole new system this year. I think, at this point, we kind of know what Daniel Jones is, and I'm sure maybe in a better environment he could play at a higher level, but I just don't see him ever being a very consistent quarterback that you could win with. And give him that contract, a long-term contract after he had one decent year, obviously has turned out to be a mistake now. But I just to answer your question, I think he has had some continuity, and he just still hasn't proven to be a very reliable quarterback. And I think he's had enough time where, there's some quarterbacks that don't even get much of a leash, like Bryce Young. But Daniel Jones has more than enough time to prove that he can be that guy and show those flashes at the very least. And I just don't think he's shown enough for you to continue investing into him.
Where do you think his game has been holding him back the most?
One, turnovers, and I know the turnover problems has gotten better, but I mean, it's still, there's times where he's just too careless with the ball in very inopportune times. And I think just consistency with, his reads and accuracy, and just being able to continue to move the ball through the air. I know part of that is he hasn't had a lot of weapons, but he does have Neighbors now. But it's just inconsistent. It seems like it's hard to zero in one issue with him, but it just seems like it's one thing to the other.
People have described him as a one-read quarterback. Can a one-read quarterback be successful in the NFL?
To a certain point, yeah. I mean, if you depends on how you define success, because if you're a one-read quarterback, you're never going to reach that elite level of quarterbacking. But if you're surrounded by very good players, a good offensive line, good receivers, a really good play caller that can get you that first read open majority of the time, then you could be successful. But there's always going to be a ceiling to that. And I think if you're drafting a quarterback in the first round, you don't ever want to lock yourself into a one read quarterback. Or if you're looking to pay a quarterback, you don't want him to be that guy.
Given the limitations of Daniel Jones's game, is there anything at this point that maybe Brian Daboll can change up to help him, maybe unlock a little bit more than what he's shown as far as his consistency?
I think the only thing you could really do is really kind of lean into the quarterback run game a little bit more. But then, Daniel Jones has kind of had issues staying healthy, and then, you kind of open yourself up to more injuries doing that. But, as we all know, he's a very good athlete. And we've seen Daboll kind of scheme up quarterback run game before. So he has that in his arsenal. And obviously you're always going to put yourself at risk, but if you do that, I mean, you're going to see a little bit more production.
I want to ask you about Malik Neighbors. I mean, from our perspective in New York here, he's been everything as advertised, but the coaches will tell you, and Malik will tell you probably, that he still has room to grow. Where do you think he can still grow in his game?
Yeah, I think it has to do with route running and being more precise with his route running. So, I mean, that was one of the only negatives I had with Malik Neighbors coming into the draft was just kind of inconsistent route running. Like, he runs extremely fast, but sometimes, his breaks, he might take one or two more steps more than he should take here, or, maybe he should be, a little bit sharper on a cut here. So just being a little bit more precise. I mean, if you add that with the package he has now, he's going to be one of the really top tier receivers very soon.
Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off to a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guides and Bankrate. Earn points just by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. All right, we're talking with Ted Nguyen of The Athletic, does the film study for The Athletic. And Ted, this week, John Mara announced that or said that he was going to stick with Joe Shane, Brian Dable moving forward, that he didn't anticipate making a change there. Did that surprise you, or do you think that that's the right move?
I think it's a little bit more surprising with Joe Shane's part, just because the drafts just have not been very good. I mean, you see the product that the team has right now, and defensively they're good, but then the offensive line hasn't been good. Other draft picks haven't panned out. He gave that big contract to Daniel Jones when he really didn't need to give him that big contract at the time. I think sticking with Brian Daboll, thinking about that, I thought about that, and I think I'm more indifferent about it. If he does do it, I could kind of see why he wants to. If he does decide to fire him, I could see why he wants to as well. I think Brian Daboll showed a lot in that first year, and like I said, I like what he's doing schematically. He just doesn't have the pieces to make it work. But I mean, that first year where they won a bunch of games, it really set them. They didn't set themselves up well in the future, because like they gave that contract to Daniel Jones after that, and they didn't really start some sort of rebuild after that. It was kind of more just trying to build on what they had, and obviously it just wasn't enough. And I think Brian Daboll is a good coach, so I could see why they would want to stick with him. But again, when you lose as many games as you have in the last couple of years, I wouldn't bat an eye if they decide to move on as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of moving on, it's probably all right. It's not, definite, but it's trending in this direction that the Giants will move on from Daniel Jones. What type of quarterback do you think would best fit their system? I don't know if there's a college prospect or maybe a pending free agent, but if you had to, craft the correct quarterback for this system that can have success with this talent group, what would be your thought process there?
I think before Daboll was coach for the Bills, I thought his type would be more kind of that New England, very accurate, short passing quarterback. But maybe after his experience with Josh Daniels, he would kind of want to chase kind of that upside quarterback with the ceiling. And like I said, he's very good at scheming up the quarterback run game. So maybe he wants a guy with a little bit more mobility. I feel like one of the strengths of this coaching staff is they are pretty good at coaching around a player's skill set. So I don't know if there's an archetype, just because I've seen Daboll coach a lot of different types of quarterbacks. But I would think they would want to go for somebody with the physical traits.
You look at NFL offenses today, and I know some of the college concepts are creeping into the pro game, but the Giants, they want to be more vertical. They've aspired to be that. They're not there yet. But can a team, do you think, make a living on the shorter passing game and with the occasional vertical pass sprinkled in, or do you have to be necessarily more explosive in this day and age?
Well, in this day and age, teams are playing a lot of two deep coverage. They're playing very soft coverage, so you do have to be pretty adept at the short passing game. You have to learn, you have to be patient and hit those short passes. And you know, as far as getting deep, you have to scheme those type of passes up. You have to run play action to get deep because you have to find a way to draw those safeties up. So I think definitely you can win with a short passing game and kind of nickel and dime your way down the field. But at the same time, like you have to be able to hit those deep shots when those opportunities presents itself. And I think when you're drafting a quarterback high in the first round, you're not necessarily looking for a guy that is adept at the quick passing game, because theoretically you could teach a lot of quarterbacks to do that. You want to look for a guy with the high upside, the guy that could launch the ball and throw in different awkward angles and make every pass in that you need to.
You look at Daniel Jones' stats, and for some reason, he's better on the road than at home. I mean, I know we're
That's
getting
really
into the
awesome.
psychological aspect of it, but I mean, is there any rhyme or reason to something like that, do you think?
Maybe the Giant fans are harder on Daniel Jones than the the away fans are.
It's simply fascinating, the big discrepancy. And some guys, I think back to the 2017, the Road Warriors, they played better on the road than they did at home. And I'm just wondering, I guess it varies according to athlete, but in terms of, I want to ask you about the tight end's role, because the tight end, the Giants last year, they tried to get Darren Waller involved. Darren Waller, unfortunately, with the health issues, didn't work out for them. They drafted this kid, Theo Johnson, from Penn State, but they haven't really been using the tight end as much in the passing game as they have in, 12 personnel to do the blocking, to help the offensive line. How much of that hurts an offense, especially with today's schemes and whatnot?
Yeah, it hurts the offense tremendously. And I think, when we're talking about the short passing game, we're talking about defenses playing a little further off, having that tight end that could attack the middle of the field, attack the seams, and turn some of those short passes, a 5-yard pass to a 10-yard pass, by running after the catch. Having a tight end against these type of defenses that we're seeing a lot now is extremely advantageous. So not having an effective one and not being able to use one in the passing game definitely hurts your offense. And having a good tight end that knows how to find those holes in the zones, those are like easy button passes that you just could really help the quarterback with and kind of build his confidence with. So when you don't have that, it definitely hurts.
Hey, Giant fans, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I know we've been talking mostly about the offense. I do want to ask you a couple things real quick about the defense. Dexter Lawrence, I mean, the man's having an amazing season. A lot of people comparing him to Aaron Donald, who just, obviously retired last year from the Rams and whatnot. Can Dexter Lawrence get any better than he already is?
It's hard. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is such a unique player, and the Aaron Donald comparisons are kind of unfair, but I can see why with the production he's having. But he's a different player than Aaron Donald. He's not a guy that's he can shoot gaps, but he's just so physically dominant. It's pretty fun to watch him like treat offensive linemen like they're in middle school or something. So he's such a unique player, and I know the Giants aren't having a great season, but it's definitely, when I review film, watching Dexter Lawrence is something I look forward to.
You look at that defense. I mean, I think they're in the top half of the league in just about every single category. What has been, Shane Bowen runs a totally different system than what Wink Martindale ran. Is it that Bowen's system is a better fit for the personnel? Is it because of he's not living and dying by the blitz? What do you think has been the key to unlocking such, an improvement?
Oh, I think it starts with the defensive line. I think Dexter Lawrence has gotten even better. Obviously, adding Brian Burns into the mix, who's playing like one of the top edge rushers in the league right now, is going to help. And I do think Wink Martindale did lean a little bit too much on the blitz, and you could do that, but you need very strong corner play, and I mean, you need like very, very good corners that can hold up. And he just didn't adjust very much. So I think just having a different scheme that, does blitz, but just not at the insane level that Martindale blitzed at, does help, and you could kind of change the coverage picture a little bit. It's a little bit more in line with what modern defenses are doing and what some of the really good defensive coordinators are doing. But I think anytime you have just a very strong defensive line pass rush where you don't have to rely on the blitz and you could mix it up, it lends itself to just having just being very tough to deal with for offenses.
When you look at Brian Burns' game, he doesn't have the gaudy stats, which I think a lot of people were expecting. But do you see enough of him influencing the game, opening things up for others?
Yeah, I mean, he's still getting pressures. He's disruptive. To me, sacks are it's not the only number to look at. I mean, there's I think pressure numbers are very important. Quarterback hits. Sometimes you just don't get. You just might be unlucky for half a season, and you just can't really get home for the sacks as much as you want to. Dexter Lawrence is kind of hogging the sacks a little bit right now too. I mean, when you look at a guy like Max Crosby, there were years where people were questioning how good he was because he wasn't getting the sack numbers, but he was getting these astronomical pressure numbers. So the sacks will come eventually. That's not something I'm concerned with. But when you just watch Brian Burns and you see him and how quickly he's able to just disrupt quarterbacks and opposing offenses, it's not a concern to me. The sacks will come.
And then on the other side, and I know he's on IR right now, but Kayvon Thibodeau was looking to build on, that big year that he had last year. Where can he still get better in his game once he gets back?
I think it just has to do with just more consistent technique as far as, using your hands. And I haven't watched a ton of Thibodeau, but, there were times where I did watch him. I thought the effort could be a little bit better. So I think just honing it in your technique. I think adding a counter move to what he does could be very effective, and just more consistent effort.
All right, let me ask you this final question then. Giants, after 7 games now, showing that they have quite a number of needs, but if you had to like narrow down like the top 3 and prioritize them, what would be your picks?
Sorry, could you? Oh, needs?
Yeah, their needs.
Yeah, I think definitely offensive line would be my top need. I mean, Evan Neal just hasn't really panned out, and kind of some of the free agents haven't panned out. I think it's been so long since the Giants had a good offensive line that you have to kind of build out the interior. Maybe Illuminor, I think, is a serviceable tackle, and but I think maybe if you want to find a better long-term answer there, you could draft tackle, but definitely look to improve the interior and tight end. Like you mentioned, I think having a good tight end to go with Malik Neighbors, because Neighbors is going to command so much attention. He's going to command so many cloud coverage, safeties on his side, and just having a tight end that can work underneath and take advantage of that would be a huge boost to this offense. And of course, quarterback. You said they're going to probably move on from Daniel Jones. You got to find that guy behind center that you could build your franchise around.
All right, Ted, I appreciate you coming on. He's Ted Nguyen of The Athletic. You can read his film breakdowns online. It's actually now part of the New York Times, so you can check them out, as well as all their writers and their features. They cover all the sports and do a really great job. Ted, really appreciate you coming on with me, and I hope to talk to you again soon.